Mr. President, yesterday, along with Senators Hutchison and McConnell, we introduced a resolution of disapproval that, if adopted, will overturn the FCC's attempt to regulate the Internet through its recent open Internet order. In December, the FCC, defying Congress and the judiciary, announced an order that will give it sweeping new authority to regulate content on and access to the Internet. Particularly in today's economy, the Internet and associated applications should be able to evolve without unnecessary government interference that could stifle innovation and stifle job creation. The last thing the government needs to do is to once again burden the private sector with additional burdensome regulatory red tape. While the FCC's action is certainly concerning, it should come as no surprise, considering this administration's history of usurping the private sector role in our economy and replacing it with a more heavy-handed federal regulation. As we've learned, such regulation only serves to micromanage private businesses, and it limits their ability of companies to grow. On the contrary, this order will serve to smother creative new uses for the Internet, and it will slow the expansion of advanced broadband networks. As we know, the Internet has become an indispensable part of our economy and an integral part of our society. It's a source of innovation, information, entertainment, commerce, and communication. Largely unfettered by government laws and regulations, the Internet owes much of its success to innovators and to entrepreneurs who have had the freedom to imagine, to explore, and to create new uses for the Internet. Mr. President, the innovation and ingenuity associated with the creation and development of the Internet in this country is a prime example of what the private sector is capable of doing if its hands are not completely tied by Washington. The problem with the FCC's order is that it put the FCC itself in a position of being the final arbiter of what broadband service providers can and cannot do with their networks. As the Internet evolves, new network services and management practices may be necessary or desirable. Yet I fear the companies will now either be barred from innovating or will have to seek the FCC's permission first. Under the order, Internet providers, quote, shall not block lawful content applications, services, or non-harmful devices subject to reasonable network management. The order also states that these providers shall not unreasonably discriminate in transmitting lawful network traffic over a consumer's broadband Internet access service. Well, guess who gets to make the determination of what constitutes lawful or reasonable? It's not the consumer. It's not Congress. Rather, these are unelected bureaucrats at the FCC who alone will make those determinations. This gives the federal government, for the first time, the power to make decisions that will affect what websites consumers can and cannot access and how they may access them. I continue to believe that the competitive market is the best means to pressure or to preserve and advance the future of the Internet. That is why I've continued to fight the FCC's attempt at regulating the Internet under the guise of preserving openness. In 2009, I co-sponsored an amendment with Senator Hutchison that would have prohibited the FCC from using any appropriated funds to adopt, implement, or otherwise litigate any network neutrality-based rules, protocols, or standards. Also, late last year, I authored a letter signed by 28 of my colleagues to the FCC urging it not to proceed with this order. With the sweeping new authority that the FCC has given itself, one question should be asked. Is this order even necessary? How many people in this country have been unable to access the Internet like the order would suggest? Do the American people really want more government oversight when it comes to the internet? The internet is that last frontier when it comes to innovation without government interference. Do we really want to jeopardize that? Isn't this more like a solution looking for a problem? Consumers today have more internet access, more internet services than ever before. Business has invested tens of billions of dollars in new broadband infrastructure in this country. Internet entrepreneurs continue to offer new services, applications, devices, and content to users of broadband internet networks. In this type of environment, there is little justification for this type of proposed intrusion into the broadband marketplace. It appears then that this order is simply a solution in search of a problem that does not exist. And as we've seen time and time again in Washington, this is a recipe for producing unintended consequences, things that are not foreseen, the problems that this new rule will actually create. With the sweeping new authority the FCC has given itself, one question should be asked again. Is this order even necessary? Well, we need to answer that question, I believe, by saying no, that in this type of environment, there is little justification for this type of rule into the marketplace that is going to handcuff the internet in the future. Rather, Congress should work with the industry to find ways to encourage broadband investment and to promote competition amongst internet providers. You see, investors are eager out there. Even during this economic downturn, tens of billions of dollars have been invested in new broadband infrastructure. In turn, this has enabled internet entrepreneurs to offer new services and new applications, new devices, and content to more and more users of broadband. President Obama recently announced his initiative to expand broadband deployment so that 98% of Americans have access to wireless internet service. I support this goal. However, for this goal to be achievable, there needs to be a substantial private sector investment and participation, which I believe cannot coexist with the FCC's order. In fact, I'm confident that if this Congress and the courts do not act to reverse this order will discourage investment, stifle innovation, and cost this country more jobs. The FCC's order is anti-free market, anti-competitive, and it will threaten American innovation. And as I said before, it will cost American jobs. So what possible reason would the private sector agree to invest under this type of heavy-handed regulatory environment provided under this order? I think it will dramatically limit investment. This order only creates disincentives for private investment and innovation, which will only put us behind the rest of the world when it comes to broadband. The good news is that Congress has the tools to correct this order. So I encourage my colleagues to support the Hutchison-McConnell-Ensign resolution of disapproval of the FCC's new rule. This will allow Congress to repeal the FCC's dangerous order on net neutrality. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.